Hey everybody, this is Brian at Obedia, and today we're going to talk a little bit about the Presonus Studiolive 24/4/2 studio mixing console. This is a really cool console. I've been using this board for a little bit here in my home studio, doing some tracking with it, and I've been really enjoying working with it. It's a little big, as you can see. This might not fit that easily in your home studio. Depends on how much space you have. There is a smaller console like this available from Presonus, but if you are going to be tracking a band or a number of instruments, or if you do live sound, I think that this is a great way to go, especially for the cost. So let's talk about some of the cool features. The board is, of course, as implied by its name, a 24-channel board. You've got all of your faders. These faders aren't motorized, but that's okay. You really don't need motorized faders with a board like this because you have access to a number of other great features. You've got 4 sub mixes right here, and of course you have your primary main. And each of these channel strips has the ability to access multifunction built-in effects. So if we take a look at the middle section of the board right here, you're going to notice that we have a gate, we have a compressor, we have a limiter, and an equalizer. And the cool thing about this is that each of these effects can be applied to each one of these channel strips, and each of these effects can be independently applied. That's one of the coolest things. These aren't global when we start making changes to them, and the reason that we can do this is we have controls here for selecting each of these channel strips, and you can see as I scroll through I get different options here with some of these different effects that I have on the board. And so what this allows me to do is, let's say that I turn on the compressor and I make some changes to the gain, and I also make some changes here on my gate, and let's say my limiter, various things like that. So I've done these changes on channel 1, and then if I jump over to channel 2, those same effect settings are not going to be applied to channel 2. So I can do these effects independent for each of these channel strips, and that is really cool. I've got pan control, of course, right here. That's always a very important thing to have access to. I have access here to my sub mix channels and my main. So what this allows me to do is for each of these channels I can select how this channel is going to be sent out, if I want to send it to my subs or if I want to simply send it to my main, things like that. So again, I get a lot of control over the mix. I have options here for my auxiliary inputs. Here's my outputs. I've got headphones, I've got monitor here. I can select what the monitor is going to be sending to, as well as the phones, tape, main, solo, and then the Firewire, which is going to link the main to the internal inputs, or rather should I say outputs, on my computer. And then I have a talkback mic, which is very useful, and I also have access to the meters setting right here. So this lets me take control of what meter I'm going to be seeing, depending on what it is that I select here in the meter section. So if I select input, I'm going to see the input. You can see my mic happening a little bit here. I can also get access to the output and some of these other various controls. And then of course at the top here I've got my main outs. I've got a gain reduction meter right here, and this is all for the selected channel that I'm working with. So this shows the level of the current channel, the gain reduction, and then I'll see outputs here for my submixes. So I've got all those quick things to access right there in the top right of the unit. I've got a port here for a light if I want to drop a light in. If I'm going to be working with this in a live situation or something like that. This board, I should also mention, connects to a computer simply through one Firewire port, and that's here on the back of the unit. And so the great thing about this is that all I need to do is connect that one Firewire port, and this board will be connected up to my computer. Now, if I take a look at the controls for each of these channel strips, you'll notice these Firewire buttons on each of the channel strips. And what these do is they designate whether I'm going to set the input for the channel strip to come through the Firewire, in other words, if I'm going to be linking input back from my computer, or if I'm simply going to be using the actual inputs here on the back of the unit. Now, as to the inputs, there you're going to see much of what you expect on a mixer here. I've got XLRs, I have 1/4 inches, I have access to my sends, my receives, my outputs, things like that. So that's all very easy to get to. And again, because I can select the Firewire setting or not, I have access to really being able to modify my mix very easily right here. Each of the channel strips has phantom power, so you can enable or disable phantom power. I've been using the preamps inside of this board for most of my miking, and I've been real happy with it. It's worked really nicely, and I haven't had to have any outboard gear. That's something that to me is really important because simplicity is a great thing to have in the studio. I also have access to all of my aux sends right here. I have 10 of those, which is really great. I also have 2 FX buses right here, and I can select what I would like to apply to these FX buses by using this glowing LCD screen right here. This screen gives me access to a lot of the functions on the board, and I can select the function that I would like to pay attention to by just choosing a button right here. If I go to FX, I'm going to have access to the FX settings, and what this lets me do is choose the FX and its settings that I would like to apply to each of my FX sends. After I've made those changes just using the dial right here in the previous and next buttons, if I take a look at the FX sends right here, I can designate how much volume for each of those FX sends I would like to send out. And then I can take control of how these effects sends are going to be applied to my channel strips by clicking on the Mix button. When I click on Mix, this is going to take me out of controlling my plugins, controlling my effects right here, or rather, should I say, controlling my channel strip effects, and it's going to take me to controlling my internal effects for reverbs, things like that. Now that I am in mix mode, all I have to do is for each of my channel strips, I can choose how much I would like to send to that selected effects for each of these channel strips. So you can see there's a real function right here on being able to make multi-use of each of these channel strips. So that's really cool. One of the final really great things that's available in this board is the ability to recall settings in the board. So if I've set everything up on this board the way that I like it and I want to save this for a future session, I can click here on Store, and then I can give this a name, and then I can simply click Store again. This will store these settings inside of the board. So by using that recall feature on the board, I have the ability to recall all of the settings that I have set for my channel strips, my effects, and everything else within this board, and I can recall that session at a whim just by using the LCD right here. So that is really very cool, and again, that means that this board would be really great for live usage because you could, at that point, set a band up, mic them up entirely on stage, save your session right here inside of the board, and then create a new session for another band, and then you could just recall all of your settings inside of your board without having to go in and move faders again and things like that. So again, a real function on versatility, and that's a really, really great thing about this board. That said, there are a number of more complex features that you can access with this board depending on how you're going to be mixing. You do get a full-featured digital mixing console here, which loads up on Mac or PC, and this lets you take control of all of the channel strips from your computer. In addition, you can also take control of the built-in compressors and equalizers and things like that. So you can do all of this from the computer as well, which is very cool. Finally, another great thing that you get access to with the Studiolive is the SL Remote iPad app. And so if you get this app, it's free from the App Store. You'll have access to the digital mixing console on your computer through your iPad. So all that you've got to do is connect up to your Studiolive mixing console on your network, and then now I have access to all of the channel strips here on my board. So you can see here's my microphone, which is currently running on my Studiolive console, but I have control over this from my iPad. If I take a look here at my mixing console on my computer, again you can see I'm moving my fader around on my iPad, but I'm also moving it on the virtual mixer on my PC. And of course I have access to my compressor and also to my master section and all of the different effects that I can add to each of these channel strips, and of course control over my faders. So this is really cool, and this again would be great for live mixing because this gives you quick access to all of these features on the board, and you would be able to walk around in a room and actually do your mix from your iPad. So that's a really cool feature. So that's just a general overview of the Presonus Studiolive 2442 mixing console. As I say, there is a smaller version of this depending on what it is that you do and what your needs might be in your home studio, but for the cost of this unit you really do get full access to a mixing board that typically you would end up paying a whole lot for all of these effects and a number of other things that you would need just to be able to get even half the number of channel strips that you get on this board, and that's something I think is really cool. I hope you guys enjoyed this overview. If you have questions about the Studiolive, please get in touch with me, brian@obedia.com, or on Twitter at twitter.com/obediatutor. Thanks for watching, take care, and we'll see you again soon.